In this lesson, we will analyze the different types of transformations and be able to identify the type if we're given a diagram. So what is a transformation? A transformation is a way to change a shape's position, orientation, or size. Position means a figure's place on the plane. So where that figure is, its placement. So for example, standing in different parts of a room, whether it's by my teacher desk or standing in the doorway. Orientation means the direction that the figure is facing. So if I'm at my desk, I could be facing the rest of the class, or I could be turned to face a different wall. I would be oriented differently depending on which way I'm facing. There are 4 different types of transformations. The first type of transformation is a translation. A translation changes the figure's position on the plane. This represents a slide. So a translation means we're going to slide the figure into a different position on the graph. So for example, if I'm starting at this red triangle here and I slide that triangle this direction, that's completing a translation. Notice that the orientation doesn't change. The triangle is still facing the same way it was to start with. It's only changing the placement on the graph. This is another example of a translation. We're taking this quadrilateral ABCD and sliding it down to be this other figure. Notice that all the points are in the same spot on the figure, like A is still the top left corner, B is the top right corner. So the orientation didn't change, only the position. What I want you guys to do here is I want you to sketch your own example of a translation. The next type of transformation is called reflection. A reflection is a transformation that changes the orientation of a figure. It's represented by a flip across a line. So just like you would see your reflection in a mirror, that reflection is flipped from what your image actually is. So for example, in this triangle, notice that the orientation changes. This point that was -1,7 is now at the bottom of the figure instead of the top. So notice how the triangle has flipped across this line. Okay, here we have another example of a reflection. This red triangle has been flipped from its original triangle over here. Notice the orientation is different. I want you guys also to sketch another example of a reflection. Next we have rotations. A rotation is a transformation that changes the figure's position and orientation on the plane. This is going to be represented by a turn. So a rotation is exactly what it sounds like. We're rotating the figure around a point. So here's our original triangle. I'm rotating that triangle. Notice that the orientation is changing. Instead of C being on top of the figure, notice how C is now the bottom right corner. Here we have a turn that's actually 180 degrees. We're turning that red triangle around 180 degrees to be that blue triangle. Here's another example of a rotation. Notice how the orientation is changing as I rotate that figure. I want you guys to give an example of a rotation here. Lastly, we have dilation. This is a transformation that changes the figure's size. It's represented by an enlargement or a reduction. An enlargement means that it's going to make the figure bigger. A reduction means it's going to make it smaller. So for example, if we start with this original rectangle here, with a scale factor of 2, we're going to make that rectangle larger. Notice in the other transformations, all of the other transformations retained the size of a figure. The size didn't change in anything except for a dilation. Another example would be our center here, and our original tiger, and then by dilation, it gets bigger here. I want you guys to give an example of a dilation here. Your goal in the assignment today is to be able to match the type of transformation with the kind that it is. So being able to identify a translation, a rotation, a reflection, or dilation.